Hello and welcome back to the MAKEthrough.studio podcast. My name is Jon Champion and I'm your host on today's show. And what we like to do here is invite beautiful, creative storytellers, musicians, therapists, thinkers, philosophers, engineers, foodies, teachers and entrepreneurs on, among many other things, to talk about the 5 primary sources of inspiration in their life and how those things contribute to the core of their essence, how those things contribute to their great passion in life, the things that they simply can't live without. In today's show, we have part 2 of my brother Jon Champion. And Jon is a beautiful man. His perspective is so clear and he's so courageous and driven. And he's just a wonderful guy to spend time with. So I'm really pleased to bring you part 2 of Jon Champion. If you haven't listened to episode 1, go back and listen to that now. In the meantime, have your make through when you get a chance. What is a make through? A make through is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. A make-through is the collection of respectful opinions and discussion. A make-through is the power of collaborative problem solving and support. And a make-through is a mobile app. It's not quite ready yet. It will be ready very soon. It's quite possible that you're listening back to this at some point in the future when it is ready to download. So please go ahead and do that if you can. But recording this as I speak right now, it's not quite ready. You can go to MAKEthrough.studio, click on contact. You can sign up to be an early adopter of the app and we'll send you a nice pleasant invitation when it is ready. But that's enough of that. Let's get into the episode. Let's reintroduce ourselves to the wonderful, the glorious, the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend that is my brother Jon. He's an aspiring TV showrunner. This is part 2. So let's listen in. Let's see what Jon has as item number 3 on his list of 5 things that have inspired him in his life. Take it away, Jon. Let's go. So moving on to the next item on your list of 5 things here, number 3 on the list is another TV show.
Yeah.
One that I've had a relationship with of sorts, but didn't have anywhere near the type of impact I think it had on you.
Right.
The show is Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
So.
And again, if you say like out loud, people are like, oh,
yeah, okay.
But, so, our mum watched it like sometimes. It would sometimes be on. And I think I was like, I wait for it to finish so that I could put something else on. But in doing that, I would sort of come downstairs and catch the last like 10 minutes of an episode. And I did that once. It was a sequence in season 2 where the doctors are delivering quintuplets. And it's everyone's in the room. There's a song playing and it's for some reason it's like, oh, this is interesting. Like, it was James Blunt's song, so I knew the song, so that's kind of the into the emotional hook of that scene. But for some reason, oh, this is quite sweet and nicely put together. And then 10 minutes became 15 and before I knew it, I was sitting down to watch it with my mum. And then it just became like, oh, I actually love this show.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think one of the reasons why it resonated was those early seasons are about 5 interns who are just starting out as,
I'm interested actually.
As doctors.
Because I think you can say the word friends. I think people know what that is.
Right.
But just to go back a little bit,
yeah.
What the hell is Grey's Anatomy?
Right. Grey's Anatomy is a medical drama that started just after Friends, actually. It's an hour-long, season by season, another hybrid where the episodes have a self-contained story, but the doctors' lives are the overarching...
So it's a medical drama set in a hospital.
It's like personal and professional lives of these doctors. Like, who are they?
They're surgeons, right?
Yeah. Who are they within the confines of their job? Who are they as people that are flawed and want love? And it's that kind of combination.
And in this place, in that world, I think the senior people in that world are incredibly talented and capable and respected, right?
Right.
And then the new people coming into that world at the sort of junior level, the interns, who in their own right are remarkable human beings in the real world, like those surgeons. Like, they're so smart and so capable and so skilled. But in that scenario, they're sort of like the lowest of the low. They're the.
There's that line where there's like you're grunts, nobody.
Right.
Bottom of the surgical food chain.
Yeah. So, which I think as a storytelling mechanism, as the device there is, you instantly put yourself in that position, don't you? And because of that, because there was a group of these people starting their job at the same time, not only do you put yourself in that group, you sort of want to get their back a little bit,
100%,
right? You want them to succeed.
I wanted friendship like that, where you're together all the time. You're like, you have to put your head on someone's shoulder just for 5 seconds and have that not be weird. Like, tiny things of like, just, it's an expression of being close, and because you're in such an intense environment, you suddenly become like, you can't not be close.
Right, understood.
You're friends, and a few of them live together as well. So
Right.
it's like, you're seeing these people more than your own family, and it's that sort of, it's like friends, but with a very specific flavour of, we're working towards a thing.
Highly skilled.
Right, and it's a very sort of niche,
impressive
framework of that. But I basically just wanted to be in the show. I want to be friends with these people.
Yeah. Something else you touched on there as well is you'd say you'd come in the beginning. You'd watch the last 10 minutes of an episode.
Right.
Just because I'm going to sit on the couch with my mum for a bit and hang out and watch this thing and whatever, man. And actually, that was quite good.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why is when you talked about the self-contained structure of the show and how I think certainly in the early seasons some of those episodes were kind of procedural in a sense.
Yeah.
The last sort of, it would often crescendo in moments of 2 or 3 moments of high stakes, high passion, high emotional stakes, over a bed of meaningful and different music often. So the music choices and the needle drops in the show, particularly towards the end of the episodes, from memory, were incredibly powerful. And probably tapped into what you described before about when that connection between narrative and music and being lost in that moment for a little while.
100%.
How do you see that in Grey's Anatomy land?
So, just to be very kind of, indulgent, there's one episode that's quite intense, but it ends with a Chris Martin vocal, and obviously you can imagine, I'm now like 13 years old, and to imagine someone saying, we should use this song to score this moment, and have it be a really important moment. It was like, not only am I in love with the show, but I'm in love with the creative decisions,
layers of love,
made, and the attention,
and validating
and
your
like it was kind of saying, no, be proud that you like Coldplay, because we do
in this show that you just
love.
You just found out you like.
But obviously they had other, as you said, needle drops that were just so perfect and edited with the visuals to perfection. And it was like, I love the characters, I love the show, and then when you start to introduce music to it that was so kind of tonally on point, it was like, oh, you can write towards a kind of songtage. That's like, it's
that's the name of the episode.
So I'm ready for a sometime. Cut that. No. But yeah, it would have these moments of music and drama together. Yeah. And it was again, as you said, validation of music and storytelling being one and the same thing. And it was just okay, it's now a very specific version of the kind of thing that I would love to work on. Yes. When I eventually start working on this stuff.
Yeah. So a couple of things there. So when you're talking about music in Grey's Anatomy, something that pops into my mind is the theme song, and it was a memorable, as themes go, the Grey's Anatomy theme is pretty catchy, pretty cute little intro to the show. And just talk me through, like, hearing that. What was your relationship to that theme? How do you remember that theme song? And theme songs in general?
Oh yeah, with that one, there used to be an opening title sequence, like there'd be like a set opening title sequence to that song, but they ditched it after the first season. But it was just, again, for some reason, tonally just matched the show perfectly.
Yeah.
And it was the same music as the end credits, where the music had more of a chance to hit the beat, and
I don't remember the end. It's because
it was the same music.
It was the same.
Yeah.
Because it would always go out hard on a track, on a needle drop.
Right. So
and then it would like a final credit and go back to that.
So you have a title card that says Grace to end the episode, and that would fade out, and then it would be credits.
Because that moment in a show for me is powerful, meaningful.
Yeah.
Lost was a big one for me.
Right.
True Detective was a big one.
Yeah.
When you get that first white credit on a black screen to the right music, and you're done now. We're taking this away from you until next time, and we're leaving you with this information. Like that moment is huge in a show.
Right.
And Lost did it incredibly well. You know, on the sort of cliffhanger, on the knife edge, right, that noise, and then into that sort of really bizarre sort of jungle music.
Again,
Right. But going back to Grays, I don't actually remember that, to be honest. I remember the big sort of musical crescendo, and interestingly, I don't remember what happened at the
Just a really plinky-plonky end credit music, but because I'm weird, I started to like dance to it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like there was already a Lost dance, but like I was like, I should really choreograph a Grace dance.
Choreograph.
Because like
great.
so right, episode ends. I'm like, I've been always shy at the end of it episode. I'll be like, and then dance.
Yeah.
Like the first 5 seconds of the end credits is like just a plinky-plonky sound, and then the beat hits, and I just freestyle.
I remember.
And then there's a bit where the plink-plonk gets really specific. I was like, what if you got stung by a bee and looked both ways?
Right,
clearly.
Right, that's how dances are made, man.
Yeah, the bee theme. Like there was a bee scene, there was a running man at the end.
But that became in the Champion family, that became like a running gag, didn't it?
Like it was part of the episode.
Right.
Yeah.
It was part of the episode, yeah.
But just the reason why the end credit dance is worth mentioning is
which is specific to you
in
the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'd be like it just solidified how important it was.
Yeah.
It was like adding.
It was catharsis. It was like an outburst of satisfaction.
It was like how sometimes these things feel like yours.
Yes.
I think it was the extension of my specific fandom expressing itself.
Yes.
And if you do that enough times, you're like in love with it.
Yeah.
To the point where if you watch it with other people, you're like, why aren't you doing the way Oh wait, that's not normal.
Beautiful. Something else I wanted to ask you about that was, you talked about shows ending. Is Grace still on?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what season are we in with Grace now?
Buddy, it's just
26.
Just been renewed for 19, and I'm like...
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, part of me respects that.
Yeah.
And a big part of me wishes that they had ended 6, 7, 8 seasons.
Yeah, I agree.
Had a nice conclusion.
I agree.
I mean, who's the character, McDreamy? Who's that guy?
Derek Shepherd.
Shepherd, yeah.
Played by Patrick
Dempsey, yes, correct. And he was in love with the other character. Her name was Meredith.
Yeah, the title titular Meredith Grey.
What's the actress's name?
Ellen Pompeo.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the conclusion was there. I think he came back as almost like a sort of guest appearance kind of cameo fairly recently. I don't know much about it.
Okay.
But back in the day when they were sort of like that sort of will they won't they episode to episode felt so important.
Really?
What are your feelings on how they should or shouldn't have wrapped up?
Okay, so I agree that I would have stopped after 6 or 7 seasons.
First 2 was solid, man.
Yeah.
Those first 2 seasons.
2 is my favourite.
Right.
It's like I can't take my eyes off it. It's just beautiful. And then I love the first 6. It started to sort of settle into itself, and it found a very distinct sense of voice. And
how many episodes would you get in a season as well?
Because it was a network show, you get 24. So
right.
like Lost,
Yes.
like early Lost.
Yep.
24 a year.
In a year, man.
Yeah.
Hour long.
Yeah.
With commercials.
Yeah, in America, yeah, and here. But
So here you'd get a sort of half cut to black and
yeah,
then fade back in.
come back,
Right.
exactly. But yeah, a lot of episodes.
Stopping on that though, interestingly, with that commercial thing, and you notice it, we keep talking about Lost, it's my favourite show, like full disclosure.
Definitely.
Among others.
Yeah.
Right. But that writing for commercial in Lost, because it was always often about that cliffhanger moment, you'd get a mini version of that to the commercial.
Right,
And our experience of that in this country, perhaps not in the beginning because it did start on Channel 4, but when I remember watching the show without commercials.
Yeah, it's just like non-stop, like
cliffhanger, and then double cliffhanger at the end. You get that noise, and then you make
tired.
that, and then you're drained, and you make that sort of whoa.
Yeah.
And then a whole week until I can't binge this stuff. It's not going to be 4 seconds until the next one just plays anyway.
Yeah.
I've got to wait a week, man.
I think that's why it became such a juggernaut.
Yes, but anyway, sorry, I've derailed you. I think we were talking about the conclusion ending great.
Right, like my feeling is it's gone way too long.
Do you still watch the show?
Yeah, but not nearly as religiously or intentionally. It's
and interestingly there as well. So I remember, what time was the show on back in the day?
Like 9 PM Thursday.
But you would
once a week. But when I started to watch it, I was watching repeats.
At what time?
Like 4 PM.
Okay.
So I'd get home from school at 3:30.
Yeah.
Rush upstairs, get changed into something comfort after a long day of school
and stress and kids being mean and right.
Come down, get some sort of snack going, sit in this fold up chair on the carpet.
The Grey's chair.
Yeah, and just watch this thing.
Just watch the shit out
of it. One episode a day, Monday to Friday.
Right.
Very specific, like.
And that was by design, by appointment, scheduled for you as well.
It was just that afternoon. It happened to be on. And that's my first experience of watching it.
What a beautiful moment as well.
Like again,
sort of 4 to 5.
You've got the love story, and I'm like a kid at school that's got like a crush on someone.
Right.
I want to be Meredith and Derek. It was all hitting the right spot, but also hitting the spot of I'd love to write something like this one day. So it's personally and professionally important. But
I think I interrupted you again. I've just done it again. But, I just wanted to get your conclusion on should they wrap it up? Like, what do you reckon?
Definitely, and it's time to end it.
How do they do that now? Does it matter?
I don't think so. I think just treat it like
is a problem, right? I think if they had done it 7-8 seasons in, it would have mattered.
Yeah, there's you can't possibly stick a landing that ambitious.
Yeah.
With that much chat already behind you, so whatever the finale is, as long as it ends, but I would never not love it. It's like my feeling is, as long as those first 6 still exist, which they always will, I'm happy because I got so much joy out of those initial.
Who's the showrunner?
So Shonda Rhimes she created the show.
And a showrunner is? What's the role of that?
Showrunner is kind of typically a lead writer on a show, but also a producer. So it's kind of that conduit between creative and business person, where your heart is in it, but you're also thinking about logistics and budget and scheduling, and you're basically everyone's boss. So.
In TV land.
Yeah, you're basically a CEO of a little business.
Does Shonda Rhimes, that's her name?
Yeah.
Does she direct?
She's never directed an episode that I know of.
Right.
And I think because she's a showrunning machine, she's sort of begun to do other shows while Grace was on.
Okay.
And I think she sort of handed off a large portion of her showrunning job to someone else.
Yeah.
So she can work on Scandal or Bridgerton.
Yeah, you hear those round table videos that we watch and stuff. You hear these showrunners talk about. Vince Gilligan talks about directing his finales and stuff, his season finales. But he also talks about the decision, talking about Breaking Bad, where Walter White has got a prisoner, Crazy 8.
Oh yeah.
Captured in Jesse's basement.
Yeah.
and he's got like a bike lock around his neck.
Uh-huh.
And you hear, I've heard a conversation where they were dressing the set and how do they restrain this character, and that became another opportunity to say more about Jesse and how he's got a motorcycle and how he's got this bike lock. So Vince Gilligan would be like making his decisions. Okay, we need this bike lock. It needs to be this big, this shape, this colour. You know what I mean? But then he's turning around and positioning the camera, and talking about lighting and talking about the structure of the episode. And then he might be in a meeting about music, and then he might be in a meeting about locations.
Or sound checking.
Right. So they're sort of in TV land, where in movies you have the producers representing the studios and probably holding the money, and then you have the director, which is, you know, those two things are probably in conflict often with like creativity versus budget. In TV land, that person, the showrunner, is kind of playing God a little bit.
You're wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
But as a result, if you're doing it well, the vision for the show is much more sort of cohesive, and every episode feels like it belongs in that broader story.
Is that the dream job?
Yeah. So if I could be a Shonda or a Vince,
Damon Lindelof.
Yeah, exactly. That would be, again, to see that credit of created by.
Yeah.
It's like, right, that's the specific credit that I'd like to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely...
But that position of showrunner, that just kind of, it seems to me anyway, it's probably been around a lot longer, but certainly those people weren't in the spotlight like...
I think because the emergence of Twitter, suddenly fans have got a place to speak their
point
opinion.
out. Okay, cool.
But it's like, who do we assign responsibility for this stuff? And then it so happens that the showrunner is the person that...
I see.
I think that's why it's become more like a popular job.
Right. And the other thing I was going to ask you there is, if Shonda Rhimes said, look, we think the apex of the show Greys, we think the peak was like season 4 or whatever, we're going to go back and we're going to write a season 5 as if it was the final season.
Right.
Would you back that or not?
Yeah, as in they would end it when I wanted it to end.
They're going to go back, actors are the same age they are now, but we're just going to rewrite the narrative from the end of season 4.
Right.
And conclude it at the end of one more season.
I think if I was the same age as I was when I first found the show, I'd be sad. But I think in terms of the long game, I'd be much more satisfied to have I'd love to hold a box set of Greys where it's like there's no filler here, it's all necessary, rather than, when I explain my fandom, it's like the early ones. And it's like, you have to sort of describe season by season your relationship with it. So I would back it, but I'd obviously be sad to see it end.
Sure.
But
okay.
I think that works better.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Look, we spent a bit of time on that. Yeah. So we've got a couple more things that I think you've got something to say about. I am just going to cut in here and let you guys know that if you were to have a business or a service, if there's something out there that you think would be useful and inspiring to artists across the world, a business, a service, a product, you can advertise here as part of the show. This is where we would have our sponsored segment. So hopefully we have some sponsors and some advertising in the future, some tasteful sponsors and advertising in the future. If that's you, let us know. You can go to MAKEthrough.studio, click on contact, leave your details, leave us a little message. We'll come back to you and we'll figure it out. But for now, back to the show. Let's move on to your 4th item on this list, the 5 things that have inspired you throughout your life so far. It's another TV show, which I love, that it's a TV show, and also love this TV show.
Yeah.
The show is Leftovers.
Right.
The Leftovers.
Okay.
Just quickly, as we learned before, what is that?
Okay.
Just tell me what it is, and just introduce that show to anyone who doesn't know.
Leftovers is a HBO show by the creator of Lost, Damon Lindelof, who you love and I love. It's a show about this event that happens where 2% of the entire world disappears. And no one knows what.
2% of the people on
all like 100 and something million people just vanish.
Yeah.
And it's like no one knows why or how, if they'll return. And then the show sort of picks up 3 years after that event and examines how people deal with that kind of loss on that scale. And
Right.
the ambiguity of, are they dead? Are they time travel?
So people just vanished. There wasn't like a pile of clothes in their place.
Right.
There wasn't a puff of smoke. Like
Right.
1 minute they're in the room, the next minute they're not in the room.
Right.
And every
Whatever's
item they were
on them.
touching, everything about them went with them.
Right.
That they were in contact with.
Yeah.
And there was no evidence that there was any sort of consistency. There wasn't a sort of choice made about who it was. There were
Right.
babies went, famous people went, criminals went,
Yeah.
religious people went.
Yeah.
Massive age range. If we were, I don't think they ever did this in the show, but if they ever showed us the data of who went, there was no significant reason why these people left.
Right.
Which was a big component in how do we deal with this? We don't know why this happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, what a beautiful way to open a story with a question like that, and a dangerous way for particularly Lindelof to open a show where he's, because of Lost, under great pressure in his following project to know the answers to the questions that he's asking now. And I think you can make a strong argument that he did know the answers to the questions in Lost, but
Yeah.
perhaps people didn't see it that way. And then try to investigate what these people went through, what that grief looks like. How do they reconcile? How do they understand this moment? What did the show feel like to you, do you think?
I love that it was, on paper, it sounds like a sci-fi show. Like, you just thought, supernatural stuff is at play, but it's just about the characters and how they deal with emotion. It's like
So this sort of global sci-fi event is happening,
Yeah.
but we're focused on
the person behind that,
Right.
or people.
real world,
Yeah.
boots on the ground,
Like,
this family.
Yeah, like, there's only one difference between the world of the show and the real world, and that's the departure. Everything else is the same.
Right.
It's just this one thing that's different, and how would that affect people's lives?
Yeah.
But it was just informed by incredible writing, and the score was like another character.
Yes.
Yeah, obviously, you and I went into it, like, Lost was great. What's this going to be like? Lindelof's next thing as a showrunner. So it's like, okay, this is quite different to Lost in some ways, but also it had distinct characteristics where you're like, oh, this is undeniably the same guy that did Lost.
Yes.
Like, non-linear storytelling,
Yes.
really confusing, weird stuff happening, but some injection of humour as well, and again, prioritising music to
Yes.
deliver the tone, and it's just like, it's such a lovely way to deliver such a weird thing.
Yes. Perfect storm, I think. Beautifully written.
Yeah.
The look and feel of the show. It looks stunning.
Based on a book, so it's not like he's
Who wrote the book?
Tom Perrotta.
Right.
So it's not like he's having to start from scratch. He's got some source material. But yeah, just the tone again. Tone of the characters felt familiar, and as it went on, it just got more and more confident.
Yeah.
And
Sophisticated, I would say.
And especially season 2, it was solid, like, bulletproof episode.
Yeah. Do you think Lindelof coming off the back of, well, not coming off the back of Lost, he had a break, but like you said before, he was producing 24, 26 episodes a season in that show, with commercials, under pressure from the network to deliver a certain amount. There's like, there was a target, revenue target, this thing it's a product, we need to churn this thing out.
And also, they were like, you can't end the show.
Yes, which is a whole other topic. But what I was interested there was, as Lindelof came upon this book by Perrotta and I think was encouraged to stroke thought on his own that he would option that book and perhaps do something with it.
Right.
Coming into HBO with a handful of ideas about what he wanted.
Right.
10 chapters now. We've got an hour of time.
Yeah.
That we can make this thing look and feel exactly as we need it to. And I think it resulted in, tell me if I'm wrong, but it just felt like Lindelof had really, he was qualified at that point.
Yeah.
I think he was a little bit like a rabbit in the headlights in Lost at the beginning.
Right.
He certainly found his way throughout that show. But arriving on the door of Leftovers, I think he was truly qualified to really design that thing as it should be, and that was reflected in the material. Do you think?
Yeah, I agree, and to be 10 episodes as opposed to 25.
Yes.
the whole of Leftovers is 28 episodes.
Yeah.
And that's only 3 more than the first season of Lost. And it's just like, that's, that in itself is
Right.
such a weird idea.
Yes.
But yeah, like, to have a new network, HBO, who kind of have a different North Star, I guess, different kind of benchmark of quality.
Yes.
It was just like what Lost could have been if it was more in his control.
Right.
And yeah, it ended after 3 seasons because they were like, hey, we think we're approaching the end of this, so let's end it when we want to end it. And this
Right.
is,
When it's finished.
yeah, the reason why I think it's my favourite show is because
Yeah.
not only is it everything that I love, like, music and character and bulletproof storytelling, but it's also, there's hardly any fat on it. It's like lean as you like. There's only a couple of episodes that feel like meandering, but after those it's just everything is necessary, and you can watch it 5 times and still get new stuff out of it. It's just so accomplished and economical in terms of episode count. It's just, I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Completely agree.
And throughout the run, I was listening to, by this point, podcasts are a thing.
Yes.
So you can listen to writers talk about their process of breaking story, and as someone that wants to do that for a job, I'm getting this sort of free education from people that are making my favourite stuff. It all sort of becomes this perfect sort of, not only am I a fan, but I'm learning about the craft, and it was a perfect time. It was, I knew that it was possible to do a good show, but now, with technology and sort of the way people watch things, you can now be really, really brave with how you tell stories episodically. You can take risks a lot more now. There's just more scope to be really ambitious with how you deliver an episode of a thing. So it was like still go for this job that you want, but the bar has been raised higher, so you're gonna have to learn as you go. So that's kind of my relationship with it. It's just like, I love it, but it also said, hey, this is what's possible if you really commit to your vision.
Absolutely understand, for sure. I think also, in addition to that, the characters in the show, the characters that remain in the show, all of whom have lost someone and don't know how or why, emotionally, it's hard work, I think, and can be draining, but rewarding.
Yeah.
And it's going to challenge you to investigate internally, I think.
Yeah.
How old are you when the show was happening?
It started when I was 19.
Right.
It ended when I was 21, 22.
Right, which is an interesting point in life as you move through that first period of my whole life's ahead of me, I'm indestructible, into, okay, I'm in a slightly different realm now where I'm sort of, in inverted commas, grown up, and I've got, a handful of responsibilities, and I'm sort of evaluating stuff. I think that show forced, like I said, it forces you to internally investigate, which I think is particularly true for yourself. Like, how would you describe your sort of emotional state, of your well-being and in general, and your sort of your connection to that story versus how you felt in yourself? And do you think that show, The Leftovers, was useful in the pursuit of understanding that stuff?
In the hiatus between the second and third season, I felt quite low. I was dealing with some kind of depression, or feeling just, something changed in my sense of well-being. And because the show itself is quite existential and deals with the question of what do our lives mean, it felt like a real companion in that time, because in waiting for season 3 I would just listen to the soundtrack a lot and just spend a lot of time contemplating this change in how I saw the world, and that show was the only thing that made sense for a long time. Like everything else sort of was, I was questioning everything, but this show was like the one thing that felt like it understood that feeling. even though, no way it possibly could, but it was tapping into that somehow. So I think I definitely developed a bond with it because it was providing some kind of relief in an otherwise quite turbulent time. So that by the time season 3 started to air, luckily I'd sort of navigated the worst of that time, and so I was just ready to watch it as a fan, but also I felt like I owed it a debt because it had got me through this really difficult year, and because season 2 is the final season, I was having to sort of say goodbye to that patch of life. And this show that I loved, that, as you said, kind of was airing at a point in my life where I was, becoming a man, I suppose. So it's a really complex symphony of elements and timing, but I think that's why my love for it is so rock solid. It's as much about what it meant to me as what it did as a show. I think that's why TV is so wonderful. It's not only is it storytelling that's often really high caliber, but it can also define periods of your life because you're watching it over a series of years in the comfort of your own home, and it's different to a film. It's kind of with you for a certain period. So I think that's why that show is so important. It's both, I think, the highest caliber quality, but also very, very specific to my story so far. So I just feel lucky to have watched it.
Understood.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man. I get it. A couple of things I just wanted to touch on, or you started to talk about there. The show being quite difficult, I couldn't watch more than perhaps 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Beautiful and rewarding,
Yeah.
but quite heavy. And I think, did they start with a particular theme song and changed it out for the following season?
Oh, yeah. So the first season I think is the heaviest, like it's the most sort of bleak. But by the finale you're like, oh yeah.
It sort of becomes aware of itself, doesn't it?
But yeah, I think that's a key point in that. One of the reasons why it feels quite bleak is because the opening titles for the first season are quite sort of epic and religious, and if you're watching it on a Sunday night, it's like a bit much.
It's a bit much. Yeah.
But the second season, the opening titles are so different.
It becomes self-aware, doesn't it?
Right. It's suddenly, what if we just sort of kind of took the piss out of ourselves?
Which is a beautiful way to include the audience, like we're in on the joke almost, like we're a part of this.
We're no longer quite as self-indulgent.
Yeah. Were you happy the way it ended?
Initially I was a bit confused, like my first viewing of the finale was like, I don't really know what that was. I felt a bit like confused, and then I watched it again and it made much more sense. And by sense I mean not like, plot, just emotional sense. Like, actually it's, if you unpack it more, I had to sit at the end for a bit before I really appreciated it. But now I love the end. I think it's so moving.
Yeah.
And I won't spoil it, but some of those scenes in that last episode are just like so about what life is.
Yes.
Like it just manages to pack so much into so little, and I can only hope to create something of that caliber.
Yeah. I think it was something that Lindelof does incredibly well, and he's managed to sort of weaponize ambiguity to a certain point.
Right.
Like I've heard him talk about the architect scene in The Matrix, where you get that sort of delivery of, here's all the information you wanted.
Yeah. In quite a boring delivery.
Right. A list of things,
Yeah.
like you're saying, delivered in kind of head and shoulders, quite dry, flat background. Quick, you wanted this and this and this, right?
Yeah.
Here's the information you wanted.
Yeah.
Lindelof, I think, always leans more on the side of, here's what I'm willing to show you, and I'm inviting you to feel this way or that way,
Right.
or multiple ways, which I enjoy in his storytelling, just because I'm included, I'm a part of the process, I can contribute
Right.
to the way it's resolved.
Yeah.
I just think that's beautiful. And I think we've covered that. But interestingly, the self-examination, the sort of the therapeutic element of it, the value it had in your sort of emotional well-being is interesting to me. And that sort of leads us on to your final point on the list.
Not a
TV show. It's a person. Who is this person, John?
So, Jordan Peterson.
Right.
Who is a clinical psychologist, author, intellectual, just, that kind of vibe. So,
what does he do?
So he was a professor at university up until he got publicly known. So he was like a professor, teacher, then his lectures started to go online and got popular, and he suddenly got thrust into the sort of public discussions around all the big topics, just like very...
Typically under the heading of social justice, would you say?
I think so, just like how to be in the world. Like, the best way to change the world is to change yourself, or be the best version of yourself, and that in turn will impact the world. And I was aware of him for a few years, but not explicitly attuned to what he was discussing. But by the time the pandemic was in full flow, I was thinking much more broadly in terms of what's my place in the world, what's my relationship with what I have to offer, and how do I navigate the various obstacles that are in the way, a lot of which are sort of emotional and personal, and only I can circumnavigate that stuff. But how do I do that? And along comes Peterson, who I just...
What was your introduction to him?
Like, he often was on Russell Brand's podcast, Under the Skin.
Right.
So I knew about him, but I never sort of just dived into his stuff until early 2021.
What was the first book of his?
The first one that I was aware of was called 12 Rules for Life.
Okay.
Which is, exactly what it sounds like, sort of, what he thinks are the sort of 12 core principles that equate to a meaningful life, based on sound psychological, religious and scientific research.
Okay.
I think, I just sort of naturally found his stuff last year, and he was discussing, I'm very attracted to the idea of fulfilling, your own potential. Like,
yes.
Like, you could possibly achieve this stuff, but how do you go from having it be in this realm of impossibility to the realm of possibility? And he was talking about this stuff in a way that was chiming in chord with me, having thought about this stuff prior to reading his content.
Yeah.
And I think the more I sort of investigated his stance on that stuff, the more I just became fascinated with not only what he was discussing, but the fact that it was founded on such tight research and a life's work of investigation. And I heard a podcast where someone said, if you're at a zoo and you see a bear, it's not that interesting. If you see a bicycle, it's not that interesting. But if you see a bear on a bicycle, that's really interesting.
Right.
And then Peterson is like, not only is he this accomplished intellectual, but he's addressing the most basic fundamental elements of life. So that combination of things ended up being really fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my first introduction to him was, I think he was on about, he was displeased, he was unhappy with some terminology being outlawed or banished. I think it was something to do with the transgender community.
Right.
In a particular country, a particular law said that this language was now illegal, or something along those lines.
Be enforced by...
Sure.
Yeah.
And he was opposed to that. And in the opposition of that, it required him to upset the transgender community, I believe. So I think that's just indicative of the reason why I see him as an artist in the context that we explored before, where he, where he jumps out to you as a beacon of light who's up to something, and he's going to ruffle some feathers.
Right.
And I might not agree with everything he says, but everything he says is worth listening. Well, 90% of what he says is worth listening to, I think.
Yeah.
Just because he's going to change the way you think for a moment.
Yeah. For
better or worse, which is my read. I don't follow him as closely as you do.
Right.
But that's my read sort of externally. Is that accurate? Or
yeah, definitely. Again, because the pandemic sort of coughed up a lot of feelings of how do I possibly deal with a world that could just change at any point, like a leftovers world where it's just like, you know, you don't have much of a say in what's around you, but if you're living authentically, you're going to manifest the best possible version of reality, and therefore you'll help yourself and others. And he often talks about just being truthful and having had time to reflect during lockdown. That idea is really kind of timely. It was the right time to contemplate such an idea of being honest and getting the most out of your relationships, because suddenly we've found ourselves deprived of people, and for a time the future seemed a bit, you know, up in the air. And to hear someone discuss how to navigate such things with such clarity and intention, it was just, again, a kind of perfect storm where it just made sense in some way. It was applicable to my career aspirations. Like, you know, if I'm honest with people and I look after my well-being, I'm going to be in the best position to deliver all the stuff that you and I have discussed in the last hour and a bit. Like, if I end up making a show, it will be what it is because I've lived courageously and not the opposite of that. So I think it's just a means of, what he talks about is a means of manifesting the best possible outcome for yourself and the people around you. That just felt like a very appropriate idea during this unprecedented pandemic time.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That just sounds so real and so meaningful, and I can it's all over you what that everything you've just mentioned, what that means to you. What I'm curious about now is just sort of, as we're sort of wrapping this up, like how do you think you collect these things that have inspired you and many more besides in addition? How do you utilize this inspiration? What's your advice to collect and to understand and to utilize inspiration specifically? How do we channel it, do you think?
That's such a good question. I think the stuff that inspires you, I love the idea of, you can't choose what inspires you, it happens to you. You don't really have a say in it. We hardly understand ourselves, really, and when you find yourself in awe, part of you that's kind of unknowable is at play. So if you find yourself being drawn to whatever you're drawn to, whether it's music or art or anything creative or beyond, just know that you're being spoken to on the deepest level. So if you can constantly keep that kind of, I don't know, response at the forefront of all of your decisions, if you know, it should be part of your decision process for if you're going to move house, if you're going to get another job, if you're going to go on a date with someone. Like, it's how does the part of me that gets inspired by things respond to the everyday stuff, if you're being really honest. So I think just don't forget that you're moved by whatever you're moved by, and don't kind of brush it aside. I would prioritise it over rationale. I think it's because it's ultimately more truthful than the everyday stuff. It's the real stuff. So it's a very long way of saying, lead with that feeling of whatever it hits you, make sure that you're prioritising it, is what I'm saying. That's a very long answer.
Received. I think that's a beautiful place to end it. Anything you want to conclude with?
Just thanks for having me on.
Oh mate, great pleasure.
This is so
what a pleasure.
Cool.
You're gonna be back, man. This is like the first of many. I feel like.
Okay, well, I'm just so behind what you were trying to do, and I think it's so cool. I'm very pleased to be able to be a small part of it. So thanks for.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the MAKEthrough.studio podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to bring you part 2 of Jon Champion, just to hear the conclusion of his list of 5 things that have inspired him in his life so far. I'm quite confident that we'll hear from Jon again. I said it in episode 1, but I think he's going to be like a returning hero on the podcast. So looking forward to hearing from Jon again. Please do like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, request alerts, engage with the show if you can. And if you'd like to appear on the show, we'd love to hear from you. If you're a musician, a thinker, thinker, a foodie, a philosopher, a teacher, entrepreneur, cosplayer, illustrator, writer, dancer, performer. If you're a beautiful, mischievous creator of any kind, you can go to MAKEthrough.studio. Click on contact, you can send us a nice little message there, and we'll be in touch to schedule your appearance on the show, and we can talk about your list of 5 things that have inspired you in your life. On the next episode of the MAKEthrough.studio podcast, we have yoga instructor and guru and thinker and philosopher Gabriella Tocatoro. I've said that wrong, and she'll be mad at me for saying it wrong, but she can correct it on the next episode. It's fine. She'll just come on and she'll say her name, and it will just sound like a person is talking in a normal kind of way, and your people will understand it. So that'll be fine. When we get to that, everything will be fine. It won't be weird. But once again, thank you for listening to the show. We really do appreciate any support, and we hope we're inspiring you guys out there. If you're working on something, creating something, collaborating on something, come and be a part of this community that we're trying to build. Come and find your tribe. Tell us what it's about. Come and share your creativity. If you're an artist of any kind, you have a responsibility to cultivate your talent. Allow it to feed the people around you, those creative people around you that you can't live without. And equally, let their creativity feed you and just refresh you and reinvigorate you, and you can magnify your ideas when you're surrounded by people just like you. So come and have your make through when you get a chance. But until next time, good luck and go well.